I started working as a caregiver a few months ago. I was drawn to help others because of my grandma's decline. At 32, I thought it would be fulfilling. The facility was an old house from the 1920s. It had those creaky wooden floors and a cozy vibe. But there were whispers among residents about unsettling things happening. It made me uneasy, but I tried to focus on my job. Everything seemed normal at first. I set up for my night shifts and started my rounds. The place was quiet, just the usual creaks from the aging walls. Around midnight, I heard Mrs. Thompson call out. I stepped into her room. She sat in her chair, staring out the window. I asked if she needed anything. She replied, "Lydia just visited." I felt my heart race. I didn't know a Lydia. I asked who she was. Mrs. Thompson just pointed to an empty corner. She was right there, she insisted. I felt a chill run down my spine. After that night I noticed odd things. Residents talked to someone invisible. Their eyes showed fear or joy. I heard bits of conversations in the hall but found no one there. I thought it was just the aging minds or my own imagination after long shifts. I wanted to give the place the benefit of the doubt. One night, while I was in the common area, a shadow flitted past my eye. I turned, but all I saw was my own reflection in the glass. A few nights later, Mrs. Martin told me, "Don't stay alone at night." She shivered as she said it. I wanted to laugh it off, but her hands trembled, and my stomach tightened. Another night on break, I found a bracelet in the hallway. It wasn't anyone's. I picked it up, thinking it might belong to a resident. I asked around, but no one claimed it. When I put it down, a weight pressed on my chest. I didn't want to be there alone anymore. One evening, I went to check on Mrs. Thompson. I heard her whispering softly. I leaned in closer. "Lydia, why did you leave me?" My throat tightened. That was it. I turned and quickly left her room. I needed air, so I sat in the hallway, my heart racing. Then I heard a voice. It wasn't Mrs. Thompson, and it wasn't from the room. "Help me." I looked around, but the hallways were empty. My breath caught. I had never felt so alone. Just then, someone asked, "Why are you sitting here?" I spun around. Nobody was there. I felt cold. My mind raced with confusion. I stood up and moved quickly down the hallway, my heart pounding. I felt watched, but I couldn't see a soul. I didn't know what was watching me. I prayed for my shift to end. I couldn't shake the feeling I was alone. I still think about that place. I wonder if Lydia was real. I wonder if Mrs. Thompson saw something I couldn't. I wonder if something was waiting in that empty corner. I returned to work the next night, still shaken by my previous experience. I thought I would feel a bit better after a good night's sleep, but that didn't help. The atmosphere inside the facility felt heavier than before. My usual routine made me uneasy now, each creak of the floorboards reminding me of the whispers and shadows. As I did my rounds, I noticed that Mrs. Martin wasn't in the common room. I'd seen her there every night, knitting or chatting with other residents. I asked one of the other caregivers about her. "Oh, she has been feeling well lately," she said while stacking chairs. "You should go check on her." I hesitated but decided it was part of my job. I found Mrs. Martin in her room, the curtains drawn tight, the dim lighting casting eerie shadows. She lay on the bed, eyes closed, but she looked restless. I approached quietly, not wanting to startle her. "Mrs. Martin?" I called softly. She opened her eyes slowly and stared at me. "Lydia," she whispered, her voice fragile. Just hearing that name made me shiver, and I felt a familiar chill race down my spine. "Lydia's not here, Mrs. Martin." "What do you need?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Lydia, she never stays long," Mrs. Martin murmured. I felt an urge to flee again. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. "You need to listen to me," she said suddenly, her voice sharp and urgent. "She's coming for you next." I stepped back, attempting to laugh it off. "Who's coming for me?" I tried to sound brave, but my hands trembled. She was losing it again. "The one they all talk about," she continued, her gaze shifting to the corner. She wants you to join her. You don't belong here. No one should be here. That S when I heard it, the soft, echoing laughter of a child. It rang through the room and froze me in place. I looked at Mrs. Martin, but she was staring into space, not acknowledging the noise. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. What was that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Lydia, Mrs. Martin almost smiled. She's playing. She likes to play. A knot formed in my stomach. I suddenly felt very exposed, as if something unseen was brushing against my skin. I had to get out of there. I excused myself and rushed down the hallway. The laughter echoed again, this time louder, more pronounced. My breath quickened, and I pushed myself faster to the exit. My shift dragged on, the minutes stretching endlessly. When I finally stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, the cool night air felt like a relief. But as I looked back at the old house, I felt the weight in my chest return. Inside, I saw them figures gathered in a circle, the residents of the facility. They were laughing too. My stomach dropped. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I recognized a few of them from the porch swing, their silhouettes flickering in the dim light. It was then I realized that maybe this wasn't just about someone named Lydia after all. I was about to discover something much darker. I turned to leave but stopped dead in my tracks. I didn't even want to know what happened next. I felt a presence behind me, something looming in the shadows of the house, just out of sight. I took a deep breath, ready to confront whatever had been haunting me. But just as I turned around, everything went dark. I blinked in the darkness, my heart racing. It felt like I had been plunged into a deep well. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog from my mind. Moments later, a flicker of light returned, illuminating my surroundings. I was still outside, but now the air felt thicker, heavier. I scanned the area, searching for the presence I felt moments before. Nothing moved. But then I heard it again, the faint laughter, echoing strangely in the stillness of the night. It seemed to come from within the house, beckoning me to return. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to call out and get someone's help. But another part, fueled by an irrational curiosity, urged me to investigate. I took a deep breath and headed for the front door, my steps slow and deliberate. Inside, the hallway was dimly lit, shadows clinging to the corners. I felt a chill run through me as I made my way deeper into the facility. The laughter echoed again, this time mixed with faint whispers. I couldn't make out the words, but they seemed to be calling my name. I reached the common room but stopped short. The gathering I had seen earlier was gone. Only empty chairs remained, an unsettling void where laughter had just filled the air. My mind raced. Where did everyone go? Anxiety crept up my spine like fingers tracing over my skin. Then a door slammed shut down the hall. I knew I shouldn't follow it, but I couldn't ignore my instincts. I was drawn to it, an invisible thread tugging me forward. I walked slowly toward the noise, my footsteps muffled against the worn floorboards. As I neared the door, its surface felt cold, foreign. I placed my hand on the knob, hesitating again. The laughter and whispers swirled in my mind, urging me to open it. With a final deep breath, I twisted the knob and pushed the door open. Inside, the atmosphere was transformed. Dim light illuminated a small room filled with children's toys, dolls, building blocks, and a toy chest overflowing with forgotten treasures. In the center, a small figure sat on the floor, back turned to me. I felt a jolt of recognition. Lydia? I whispered, but my words seemed to die in the air. The figure remained still. As I took a step closer, the child turned around. The face of Lydia was pale and somber, her eyes wide and unsettling as they met mine. I realized then that her smile was not one of joy, but something else entirely, something darker. Don't worry, she said in a sing-song voice, the laughter fading into something more sinister. You can stay with us forever. At that moment, everything around me felt off balance. A rush of fear shot through me, and I stumbled back, nearly falling into the hallway. I turned to run, but the door snapped shut behind me. With the darkness closing in, I banged on the door, desperate to escape, and then I heard it, the whispers returning, but this time they didn't just call my name. They echoed with the names of residents long gone, and I knew deep down that I had disturbed something ancient and unwelcome. I had barely begun to understand the secrets beneath the surface of this place, and now I feared it was too late to turn back. The sound of my pounding fists on the door filled the small, toy-strewn room, but it felt like no one was listening. The laughter had transformed into a low hum, wrapping around me like fog. I stepped away from the door, my heart racing with the need to escape. The shadows pressed in, feeling almost alive, taunting me. I turned, my eyes scanning the room for another way out. But the only exit was the door behind me, now solid and unyielding. The walls felt as though they were closing in, as if the house itself was alive. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on a toy. I fell to the ground, pain shooting through my ankle. I bit my lip to stifle a cry. "Help!" I shouted, desperation echoing off the walls. "Somebody! Help me!" Nothing but silence greeted me, followed by the soft rustle of the toys. I scrambled to my feet, gripping the edges of the toy chest. My fingers brushed against something cold and smooth, an old, dusty music box. Without thinking, I lifted it and opened the lid. A haunting melody played, the sound mingling with the whispers that filled the air. As the music played, the shadows danced along the walls. I felt a pull, my body swaying slightly to the rhythm. But with each note, something shifted deeper within me, an unsettling sense of recognition. The whispers grew louder, now distinctly forming syllables. I could almost make out their words: "Join us, stay with us." The voices were so familiar, and yet so unfamiliar. I slammed the music box shut, breaking the spell. The melody cut off abruptly, leaving behind an eerie silence. I needed to think. I had to remember how I got here, why I was here. My mind raced through the night's events, searching for clues, searching for an escape. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a small window high on the wall. It was just big enough to squeeze through if I could reach it. With renewed determination, I climbed onto the toy chest, my heart pounding as I struggled to stand on unstable ground. I reached for the window, stretching my fingers toward the latch. But as I grasped it, the room seemed to shake. I felt a cold breath against my neck and the laughter returned, unnaturally close. I froze, my instincts screaming to move, but my body betrayed me, locked in place. "Stay with us," Lydia's voice echoed, now layered with the sounds of many. I looked back and saw the shadows shifting, merging into forms that made my stomach turn. I yanked at the latch, panic fueling my movements. The window creaked open, and cool air flooded my senses, a siren calling me back to freedom. I couldn't hold on much longer. The whispers were growing louder, pressing in around me, pulling me back into the darkness. That's when I saw a flicker of light breaking through the curtains, illuminating the room in an almost blinding way. The shadows shrank back, retreating from the brightness. I didn't think, I just acted. I crawled out of the window, the night air hitting my face like a slap. But as I landed on the ground outside, the light faded, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned, knowing I had to face what I had awakened. The laughter crescendoed, and in that moment, I realized I might have escaped the room, but I hadn't escaped the house. Someone else was still inside. The cold air hit me like a bucket of ice water. I stood outside, heart pounding. The house loomed behind me like a dark sentinel. I took a step away, glancing at the window I had just crawled out of. It looked peaceful, yet I knew the chaos that lay within. I crept further from the house, hoping to escape the lingering chill of its presence. My mind spun with unanswered questions. What had I just experienced? Why had Lydia's voice called out? Shaking off my thoughts, I turned to run, my ankle protesting with each step. Then, I heard a soft tapping that echoed through the stillness. At first, I thought it was the branches of a nearby tree swaying in the wind. But as I looked back, my stomach dropped. The window was open, and shadows flickered just inside the frame. I froze, watching as the forms began to move again. They shifted and swirled, rising like vapor from the ground. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Was I really free? Or was this just the beginning? Backing away slowly, I turned to scan my surroundings for any signs of life. I spotted a light flickering in the distance, my neighbors. Surely, they would help me. I started to jog towards it, but the instinct to look back was too strong. That's when I saw something new. A figure stood just inside the doorway, illuminated by the faint glow of the night. My heart dropped. They looked like a child, small and fragile, with curly hair and wide, lost eyes. My breath hitched as recognition washed over me. "Lydia?" I whispered, fear gripping my chest. The figure didn't move, but a haunting smile spread across their face. "Stay with me," they echoed, their voice a sweet melody steeped in mock innocence. A gust of wind howled through the trees, and I panicked. The laughter returned, louder this time, filling the air with a visceral energy that rattled my bones. I stumbled backward, my instincts screaming for me to run, but the house seemed to pull on my very soul, heavy and unyielding. I forced myself to turn and run toward the light that marked safety. But as I rounded the corner, another figure emerged from the shadows. This one was taller, defiant. My heart pounded harder. This wasn't he over. I ran faster, ignoring the thorns that snagged at my clothes. I could hear whispers rising from behind me, urging me to return, begging me to turn back. I didn't dare look. But a quick glance wasn't possible. The laughter echoed closer, and fear pushed me onward. Just as I reached the path leading to the neighbor's house, the air thickened with dread. I heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate, trailing just behind me. "Help!" I cried out once more, desperation pouring hot through my veins. No one answered. The shadows closed in. The path ahead began to blur. I needed to know who was after me and why. But as I pressed on, I felt a chilling certainty. Whatever was in that house wanted me back. I reached the light, every fiber of my being urging me to safety. But then I saw it etched against the glow. A figure standing on the doorstep of the house, waiting. And that's when I realized I hadn't just run from the darkness. I had drawn their attention. I blinked against the brightness spilling from the neighbor's porch. My heart raced, caught between relief and horror. The figure on the doorstep loomed larger in my vision, its features calculatingly obscured by the light. I could feel the heaviness of the air, swirling with echoes of the laughter, and whispers urging me to return. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. The figure stepped forward. It wasn't Lydia. I couldn't see their face clearly, but I recognized the outline of the body. It was a grown man, his posture threatening. My instincts screamed at me to turn and run again, but there was no time. "Stay where you are," he commanded, and his voice sent a jolt through my veins. It was authoritative and chilling, resonating with an ancient power that seemed to draw me closer against my will. I backed away slowly, glancing over my shoulder at the darkened house, torn between the two dangers. The whispers grew louder in my head, weaving tales of despair and desperation. Something pulled me back, an invisible tether created by fear and curiosity. "I know you," I gasped, comprehension dawning. "You were in the house." He nodded, a sinister grin creeping across his face. It chilled my blood. "I'm not the one you should be afraid of." Before I could respond, the shadows around me surged. The air felt dense, suffocating. The man's smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp, and his eyes glinted with a predatory hunger. Then, I heard a familiar giggle, unmistakably Lydia's. The sound danced across the space, disarming and taunting. It pulled my attention back to the house, where the window had flung open wider. I glanced at the man, but his focus shifted. He was watching the house, the invitation hidden behind his manic delight. "Come play," he beckoned, a crooked finger gesturing toward the darkness. My pulse quickened, and I knew this was a trap. But something about Lydia's voice still held me captive. I turned, looking back at her silhouette in the window. "I can't leave you," I murmured, torn between the light on the porch and the call from the shadows. The man laughed softly, but it was filled with malice. "True freedom lies within. Remember that." Suddenly, I felt the ground beneath me shift, and the path to my neighbor's house began to narrow. Panic surged through me. I sprinted toward the figure on the doorstep, my instincts urging me to flee. But as I charged forward, I felt the pulling sensation intensify, as if the very shadows were reaching for me. With every ounce of strength, I launched myself to the side, determined to dodge the man's grasp. I stumbled into the yard, falling onto the grass. I looked back, breathing heavily, praying I had escaped. But the man was standing at the edge of the light, laughing again, the sound echoing through the night. "You can't outrun your past," he said, as the shadows behind him began to churn violently, swirling into a familiar shape. Fear bubbled in my chest. What did he mean by that? And that S when I saw it, the doorway of the house behind him flickered once more, and out stepped a figure dressed in white, their features eerily similar to mine. My heart lurched as I recognized my own face. A doppelganger, running from whatever darkness awaited in that haunted home. And I realized with dread there was no true escape. I scrambled to my feet, my breath quickening as the double stepped forward. My mind screamed for clarity, but all I could feel was a suffocating dread washing over me. She moved with a fluid grace, mirroring my every motion, yet there was an unsettling aura around her, something wrong, something twisted. Who are you?" I stammered, half hoping she'd vanish into the night, but she just smiled, a cruel twist of my own lips, mocking me. The man behind her laughed, his eyes glinting with delight. "You have so much to discover, my dear. Isn't she beautiful?" I felt my gut twist. Beautiful wasn't the right word. She was a grotesque reflection of who I was, like a shadow come to life, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness in her eyes was a harbinger of the horrors I'd tried to escape. "Lydia!" I called out, hoping maybe my friend could pierce this nightmare. But instead, the echo of her name faded into the night, swallowed by the creepy laughter that surrounded me. The doppelganger took another step closer, and in that moment, I saw what lay behind her. The doorway of the house pulsed, thrumming with an energy that felt ancient and alive. It was sucking the warmth of the night. The air became heavy with a coldness that clenched at my heart. The man gestured back toward the house. "You don't need to be afraid. Your other self knows the way. She can guide you." "No!" I shouted, taking a step back. My instincts screamed louder now. The house was not my sanctuary, it was a trap. "I don't want any part of this." But the doppelganger continued to smile, her gaze unyielding, drawing me in with a magnetic pull. It was as if I was seeing my own desires reflected in her expression, the wanting to know, to understand the darkness, to find truth. Then, a flicker of movement in the shadows behind her caught my eye. Another figure crouched, lurking, just out of sight. My breath caught. This was getting worse. What else was hiding in those shadows? In my gut I felt it a warning. "Your curiosity will lead you to answers only if you're willing to accept the truth," the man said, tilting his head with a demeanor of twisted delight. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of Lydia again in the window. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, panic etched on her face. My heart raced with a new urgency. Could she see the other me? Did she know what was happening? I felt a sudden surge of desperation. "Lydia!" I shouted again, but the sound echoed against the dark brick of the house, and the man's laughter echoed back. The shadows shifted, and before I could react, my doppelganger lunged at me. I barely ducked in time, stumbling sideways, heart hammering in my chest. Then everything went dark. A shroud of black enveloped me, squeezing out the light. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Panic bubbled inside me as I felt hands grasping, pulling me deeper into the void. The last thing I heard was the haunting giggle of my own laughter echoing in the distance. I gasped as I stumbled forward, the weight of the darkness pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. My lungs burned, and all I could think about was escaping. I flailed my arms, desperate to find something solid to cling to, but instead, I felt an icy surge pass through me like a current that sent shivers down my spine. Then, just as quickly as it had engulfed me, the darkness receded. I fell onto cold, hard ground. The air was thick and smelled stale, as if the light hadn't touched this part of the world in ages. I blinked, trying to adjust, and found myself in a dimly lit corridor. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, and the floor creaked under my weight. "Hello?" My voice was tiny, swallowed by the vastness of the place. Silence answered back, an unsettling stillness that heightened my senses. I pushed myself to my feet, scanning my surroundings for any sign of the man or my doppelganger, but there was nothing. Just me, alone in this strange space strangled by shadows. My heart raced, and I backed away from the walls, unsure of where to step. Then I remembered Lydia. Panic surged again. "Lydia!" I yelled, but my voice just echoed into the dark, taunting me with my helplessness. As I moved deeper into the corridor, I noticed doors lining each side, some slightly ajar, others locked tight. What lay beyond those doors? I hesitated but needed to know. One door stood out, a faded blue that looked less menacing than the others. I approached it and gently pushed it open. Inside was a small room filled with broken furniture and dusty cobwebs. In the corner, something glimmered. My curiosity drew me nearer, and I could hardly believe my eyes. It was a small, antique mirror, its surface tarnished but holding a faint shimmer. As I reached out to touch the frame, a sudden chill rushed through the air. I caught a glimpse of movement from the corner of my eye. My breath hitched. It was my doppelganger. She stood there, an eerie smile on her face, but this time, her image flickered like a bad television signal. "No! Get away from me!" I shouted, retreating back into the corridor. But she gestured towards the mirror, and her expression shifted, a mix of pity and sorrow. "Look," she whispered, her voice soft yet mocking. I hesitated but then turned back to the mirror, drawn by a strange compulsion. What would I see? My heart raced as I leaned in closer. As my reflection came into focus, I realized it wasn't just me looking back. Behind me were dark shadows, creeping closer. I turned, panic gripping me. "What are you?" I screamed, stumbling back as the shadows lunged forward, shifting and writhing like living nightmares. The world around me spun, and I felt the room tremble. I had to escape before the shadows consumed me. I bolted down the corridor, hearing only the echo of my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. That S when I heard it, a familiar voice, calm yet distorted. "You have to choose, you can't run from what you are." I skidded to a halt, mind racing. I had no idea what I was stepping into, but there was no turning back. I stood there, frozen, as the echo of that voice lingered in the air. It felt like it was wrapping around me, squeezing. What I am? I wondered. What did that even mean? My head spun, trying to process everything. The corridor stretched before me, dark and endless. I could still feel the shadows behind me, lurking. I needed to move, but my body felt heavy, as if the air had thickened to molasses. Finally, I forced myself to take a step, then another, heart pounding with each sound my feet made against the wood. I spotted another door, this one rusted and heavy. It looked more worn than the rest, hinting at entry to something significant, or something worse. I gripped the handle, hesitating momentarily. What did I want? Answers? Safety? Or maybe just the strength to confront whatever lurked in the shadows. Taking a deep breath, I swung the door open and stepped inside. The room was dark, with only a small window high above that let in faint light. As my eyes adjusted, I saw more mirrors lined up against the walls. Each one captured different reflections, but none were mine. Instead, they showed glimpses of twisted forms and grotesque faces, all contorted in silent screams. I felt nausea rise in my throat. This isn't real, I shouted, but the mirrors only reflected my panic. That S when I caught a flicker of movement from one. I moved closer, heart racing. The faces in the mirrors were familiar, echoing features of people I had known. Friends, strangers, and even Lydia, all looking trapped, their eyes wide with terror. "Help us!" A voice whispered from one of the mirrors, the voice so close it sent chills racing down my spine. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. Was I seeing them? Was I losing my grip on reality? No! I want to help you! I yelled, anger mingling with fear. Suddenly, the flickering light intensified, and the air grew colder. I could feel the shadows trying to pull me toward the mirrors, as if they wanted me to join those trapped souls. I had to get out. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut, bouncing back at me with a dull thud. No! Panic surged again. I banged on the door, but it was solid. Please, just let me out. My voice grew frantic. Then I heard the soft laughter again, gentle and cruel. You have to choose, it echoed. Remember, it's always been about choices. A realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. The doppelganger. The mirror. This place was a manifestation of my fears, but also my connections. I couldn't run from what they meant, nor could I ignore what lingered in my heart. There had to be a way to face this. As shadows crept in closer, I focused on what I needed to do. All the faces were connected to my choices. If you don't help them, they stay trapped, I muttered to myself. The urge to flee was strong, but maybe, just maybe, there was another way. Then I saw something on the floor. A small shard of glass from one of the broken mirrors lay shimmering, reflecting the faint light. Perhaps it could help me shatter their prison. Before I could second-guess myself, I lunged for it, desperation fueling my every move. But as I grabbed it, the laughter ceased, and the shadows converged, clawing at my ankles. It was now or never. Stand back. I shouted to the mirrors, ready to fight for their freedom and my own. The air thickened with tension as I held the shard of glass. I could feel the weight of the trapped souls in the mirrors, their desperate whispers urging me on. You have to help us, they cried, their voices melding into a haunting chorus. Taking a deep breath, I stepped back into the center of the room, the shadows swirling like a storm around me, clawing at my legs. I gritted my teeth and raised the shard high above my head, the dim light catching its jagged edges. You're not going to keep me here, I shouted, determination echoing in my voice. With one swift motion, I brought the glass down against the nearest mirror. It shattered with a deafening crack, sending a cascade of light and shadow spiraling through the room. I could see the reflection of every anguished face trapped inside, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. As the shards fell to the floor, the air vibrated with energy, and for a moment, everything stopped. The shadows recoiled, the laughter fading into a soft whimper as if they had been struck. I didn't waste a moment. I lunged for the next mirror, the sound of shattering glass orchestrating freedom with every strike. Each piece that fell released a portion of the voices, friends, neighbors, even faces I barely recognized breaking free from their prison, their spectral forms swirling in the air before vanishing, echoing their gratitude. But just as I felt a flicker of hope, a powerful force clawed at me from behind. I turned to face my doppelganger. She glared at me, her features twisted with rage, the shadows behind her swirling with intensity. You can't escape, she screamed, and I felt the cold grip of her essence reaching for me. No! I yelled back, wielding the glass shard like a weapon, desperate to maintain my ground. I'm not afraid of you. With every ounce of strength, I hurled the shard into the last intact mirror. The shattering explosion resonated like a thunderclap, and for a moment, time stood still. The glass cascaded outward, enveloping me in a kaleidoscopic whirlwind. I felt the shadows retreat, all their deceit unraveling in the face of my resolve. Then, with a final surge, I felt myself being pulled upward, as if the very air was lifting me free of the darkness that had weighed me down. I closed my eyes against the brilliant light, and the echoes of laughter faded away into a soft sigh. When I finally opened my eyes again, I found myself outside in the cool night air, the old facility looming behind me like a fading nightmare. I was alive, but the weight of what I had encountered pressed heavily on my heart. The house stood still, serene in the moonlight. The laughter and whispers had vanished, but a haunting stillness lingered. As I turned to leave, the light of the neighbor's porch flickered in the distance, marking safety. But just as I moved away, something stirred within me, a sense of loss and a knot of questions. What had I truly set free? And what of Lydia and the other souls? Did their freedom come at a cost, or were they still bound to that house in some unexplainable way? I glanced back one last time, a shiver running down my spine. The front door creaked open slightly, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadow linger just inside, watching me. My heart raced with a mix of fear and resolve. I didn't know if I'd truly escaped, or if the darkness would come creeping back when I least expected it. I moved on, feet carrying me toward the light, while behind me, the old house stood silent, its secrets buried but never forgotten. Even from a distance, I could feel its weight on my shoulders, a reminder that some questions in life remain unanswered, taunting you from the shadows. I might have escaped, but I knew better than to think I was free. And so I walked away, the night air still pressing against me, the taste of fear lingering on the edge of my thoughts. I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if Lydia is still there, trapped in that darkened house, whispering her name to the passing night. But mostly, I try not to think about it.